They said it was just a myth, a symbol. But someone sent me proof. Not a copy. The real thing. Welcome to the Enchanted Archive, where we talk about the knowledge you're not supposed to have. Subscribe if that sounds like your kind of truth. Like this video if it makes you question everything. Let's begin. I got the package on a rainy Thursday. No return address. The paper was ancient, thick, fragile, smelled like dust and frankincense. Stamped on the seal, a double serpent around a sun. Hermes Trismegistus. Now you've heard the name maybe, or at least seen the phrase, S above, so below. It's printed on yoga shirts and tattooed on ribs, but almost no one knows what it really means. Let's break it down. No fluff, no filler, just facts. Who was Hermes Trismegistus? The name means thrice great Hermes, but he wasn't a real man in the way you think. He's a fusion, a blend of the Greek god Hermes and the Egyptian god Thoth. So, why merge them? Because both were gods of knowledge, of writing, of magic. And in the centuries after Alexander the Great, when Greece met Egypt, something strange happened. The myths began to blend, and out of that came Hermes Trismegistus. Not a god, not quite human, something else. The ancient world saw him as the source of all sacred wisdom. He wrote texts that weren't just philosophy, they were instructions for the mind, for the soul, and some say for reality itself. What did he teach? Let's keep this simple. Hermes taught that the universe is mental, not metaphorically, literally. The all is mind. Everything you see, sky, stone, people, planets, is shaped by thought. Not your thought, but a primordial thought, a divine blueprint. He also said, that which is below is like that which is above. And that which is above is like that which is below. It's not just poetry. It's a law. What happens in the micro in atoms, cells, dreams, echoes in the macro stars, nations, time. As above, so below. As within, so without. And if you understand those patterns, you can bend them. Just a little. Just enough. So why is it hidden? Because this wasn't just spiritual talk. Hermes wrote about alchemy, astronomy, geometry, vibration, and frequency, long before science had those words. He described the structure of the soul like a map. He hinted at other dimensions, and he warned that if this knowledge fell into the wrong hands, it would be twisted, used to control, not liberate, which is exactly what happened. His writings were banned, burned, scattered. When the Library of Alexandria went up in flames, most of them were lost, but not all. A few pages survived, smuggled, hidden, copied by mystics, alchemists, secret societies. And no, one showed up on my desk. In that envelope, there's something written inside that folio, something I've never seen in any public Hermetic text. A symbol, a phrase. Not Latin, not Greek. And when I read it aloud, something moved in the room. No breeze, no sound, just the sense that the space shifted. I'll show it to you, but not yet. You need more context. You need to understand why Hermes' teachings were buried and what's still missing. In the next part of the video, we'll go to Alexandria, to the fire, to the moment history was rewritten, and why that fire was no accident. Until then, subscribe, because what's coming next is the part they tried hardest to erase. You can't burn knowledge. Not really. But they tried. The fire at the Library of Alexandria. It wasn't just about scrolls. It was about control. Let's talk about what they were really trying to destroy. What was the library? You've heard the name. The Library of Alexandria. Sounds legendary, but it was very real. It sat on the coast of Egypt, in a city founded by Alexander the Great, and at its peak, it held over 400,000 scrolls. Some say more. But these weren't just stories or poems. They were maps, mathematical theorems, star charts, and forbidden texts. Documents from Babylon, India, Persia, Egypt, even Atlantis, if you believe the rumors. And in the deepest part of that library, behind locked doors, they kept the Hermetica. What is the Hermetica? It's a collection written under the name Hermes Trismegistus. It includes dialogues between a teacher and a student, spoken in riddles, layered with meaning. Some parts are mystical, some are scientific, and some don't belong to any category at all. The most famous is the Emerald Tablet, a short, cryptic passage. No one knows who wrote it, but every alchemist, every esoteric thinker, every secret society, they all studied it. It says things like, all things come from one. Separate the subtle from the gross, gently and with great ingenuity. It rises from earth to heaven, and again it descends to earth. Sounds poetic, but if you read between the lines, it's describing transmutation of matter, of thought, of reality. Why did they destroy it? Let's be honest. You don't burn a library by accident. You don't erase 400,000 scrolls because of a war. Not like that. The fire happened multiple times, by different people. Romans, Christians, Muslims, all at different points in history. But the goal was the same. Erase the root, rewrite the truth. Because the Hermetic texts say something dangerous. That yes, you are not just a servant of the divine. You are a reflection of it. A creator. A being of mind and will. And if enough people believe that, you can't control them with fear, with guilt, with obedience. So they buried it, burned it, called it heresy. But some survived. The lost catalog page. In the package I received along with the Hermes seal, there was something else. A single page, burnt edges, written in Demotic script, a late form of Egyptian. It wasn't a scroll. It was a catalog, a list of contents, and one line stood out. It translates to, on the splitting of thought into form. That's not a metaphor. It sounds like manifestation, like the mechanics of reality responding to mind. No known Hermetic text has that title, which means it was either destroyed or still hidden. The page also had a hand-drawn sigil. Not Egyptian, not Greek, almost circuit-like. I'm getting it analyzed. But here's what I know so far. Whoever sent this wanted me to look deeper. And what we're uncovering, it's not just philosophy. It's technology, encoded in symbols, wrapped in myth. In the next part of the video, we'll break down the Emerald Tablet itself line by line, and you'll see how it holds more than wisdom. It might be a map. Stay close. The deeper we go, the harder it gets to turn back. They say it was carved into emerald, not written, erased, as if it was never meant to be erased. The Emerald Tablet, a single artifact, small enough to hold in your hands, but it contains an entire philosophy, maybe more. Let's take it apart, line by line. That which is below is like that which is above. This is the most famous line. You've seen it on posters, on TikTok, yeah. But what does it actually mean? It's a statement of symmetry, of reflection. What happens in the stars happens in you. What happens in your mind happens in the world. It's not poetic. It's literal. If reality mirrors itself, then by changing the inner, you can shift the outer. That's not just spiritual talk. That's the foundation of quantum entanglement, fractal geometry, even holographic theory. The Hermetics knew, long before we had math to explain it. The sun is its father, the moon its mother. This isn't astrology. It's alchemy. The sun, e.g., active energy. Fire, but light. The moon, a.k., receptive energy. Cool, cyclical, ... reflect. Everything in existence, the tablet says, is born from their union. It's a symbolic formula. Consciousness, a fusion of polarities. To create something new, you need both action and stillness, will and reflection, masculine and feminine. This line alone has been used to design rituals, experiments, even early batteries in esoteric science labs. Separate the earth from the fire, the subtle from the gross. This is where it gets technical. It's an instruction. In alchemy, this line is about distillation, breaking things down to their essence, removing the noise, keeping the core. But it also applies to thought, to consciousness. Separate the ego from the soul, the signal from the noise. Only then can you understand what's real. And the line ends with gently and with great ingenuity. In other words, don't force it. Don't rush. Real change, real transformation requires precision and respect. It rises from earth to heaven, and again it descends to earth. This is describing a cycle. Matter becomes energy. Energy becomes matter. Earth, heaven, earth. Two. Physical cha, mental shu to, physical there. It's the same process as manifestation, as prayer, as spell work, as quantum collapse. You send thought upward into the mental realm, and if the structure is right, it returns downward into form. This isn't mysticism, it's function. Thus, the world was created. That's the tablet's claim. The entire cosmos was built on this cycle, on this reflection, this process. So, if you learn it, follow it, master it, then theory, you could create too. That's what Hermes was really saying. That the divine spark isn't locked in heaven, it's already inside you, just dormant, waiting. The UV discovery. Here's where it gets strange. I scanned the catalog page from the previous video, and under UV light, something appeared. A diagram. Circular. Filled with hermetic glyphs. Right in the center, the phrase, Fiat lux mentis. Let there be light of the mind. It wasn't visible before. Ink that reacts only to frequency. And that matches with something else in the emerald tap. Its force is entire if it be converted into earth. In modern terms, if mind is focused, condensed, it becomes real. Sound, light, dot, form. That's what this whole philosophy points to. The power of focused awareness. It's not law of attraction. It's law of structure, of alignment. And that brings us back to the symbol I found in the envelope. It matches the shape from the UV diagram. A mirrored spiral, almost like a DNA strand or a galaxy. That can't be coincidence. Not when these scrolls were written 2,000 years ago. In the next part of the video, we'll follow this shape because it shows up again in another Hermetic text, one that was never supposed to be found. And when you see where it leads, you'll understand why they hid this for so long. Stay close. They never signed their names. They called themselves the Three Initiates, and they left behind a single book, the Kybalion. It appeared in 1908, printed in Chicago. No author, no publisher address, just a symbol, a triangle, and beneath it the words, dedicated to Hermes Trismegistus. What is the Kybalion? It's not ancient, but it claims to preserve ancient truth, specifically the 7 Hermetic principles. These aren't rules, they're laws, described like constants, that reality is built on. Here they are: the principle of mentalism, the principle of correspondence, the principle of vibration, the principle of polarity, the principle of rhythm, the principle of cause and effect, the principle of gender. We'll break those down in a future part. But here's what matters now. The way they were written isn't ordinary. Hidden patterns in the text. I ran the full Kybalion through text analysis software, just to test something. I was looking for frequency anomalies, repeating phrase lengths, unusual word spacing, and I found them. Every chapter contains a specific pattern of prime-numbered sentences. When you isolate just those, they form new paragraphs. They read like a second voice, darker, sharper, coded. One line stood out. The cipher sleeps in the margins. Awake it at 3, 6, 9. That number sequence. Nikola Tesla was obsessed with it. He once said, if you only knew the magnificence of 3, 6, and 9, you would have the key to the universe. And now it's here, hidden in a book tied to Hermes. Coincidence? Or breadcrumb? The margins speak. I took a physical copy of the Kybalion, printed in 1912. Faded edges, fragile spine. Under UV light, again markings. Tiny dots in the margins, grouped in 3s, 6, and 9s. They weren't just decoration. When you map their placement onto a grid, you get coordinates, geographic ones, and they point to one place: Florence, Italy. The Medici connection. During the Renaissance, a man named Marsilio Ficino was hired by the Medici family. His job, translate the Hermetica. He was the first to bring Hermes' teachings into Latin, to preserve them, but also to filter them. Ficino left out entire passages, whole chapters, and in a letter he wrote near the end of his life, he confessed, "There is one truth in these scrolls that would undo the world's order. I did not dare give it voice." No one ever found what he meant, until now. Because the coordinates from the Kybalion cipher, they lead to a sealed chamber beneath the Palazzo Medici, off limits to the public, closed since 1969. And I've spoken to someone who's been inside. What they found: an old archivist, fluent in Latin, Greek, and code. He told me quietly that inside that room was a page never before catalogued, written in Latin, but backwards, like a mirror, and stamped with the same spiral sigil we saw in the UV scan of the Hermetica. This is not a coincidence. It's deliberate recursion, a pattern repeating through time, through language. And the page? It spoke of a device, not physical, Not mechanical, but mental. A way of ordering thought so precisely, it bends probability, shifts potential, like loading a script into the universe itself. It's called the silent architect. In the next part of the video, we'll try to understand what that actually means. And we'll recreate one of the mental experiments described in those missing Hermetic pages. It's not a ritual. It's a structure. One you can test for yourself. But be careful. The architect doesn't just build. It reflects. Stay tuned. It started with a mirror. Not a normal one. A disc of polished metal. Quicksilver. Mercury. That's what the lab notes called it. And they weren't dated. No signature. No author. Just a heading. Reflections of the mind in motion. And at the bottom, the spiral sigil. Again, the rediscovered manuscript. The page from Florence wasn't alone. There were others, filed under Fragmenta Hermetica, Latin text, Greek diagrams, Arabic marginalia. They described a mental structure, something between a meditation and an interface. One line repeated in multiple languages. When the mind becomes still, the image shall rise. At first glance, it sounds like poetry, but the lab notes turn it into procedure. The experiment setup. Here's what they did. Room sealed. No noise. Total stillness. Quicksilver disc placed flat on a stone pedestal. Observers seated directly in front, at eye level. A specific sequence of thoughts repeated internally. Not words. Not mantras. Shapes. Rotating in the mind's eye. And then they watched the mercury. At first, nothing. Still, perfectly reflective. Then, movement. Not from air. Not from vibration. From thought. What is Quicksilver? Let's pause. Quicksilver is the old name for mercury, the only metal that's liquid at room temperature. Ancient alchemists believed it was alive. A bridge between the physical and the ethereal, between solid and spirit. It reacts to electromagnetic fields, to vibration, to intent. That's what this experiment was testing. Because in Hermetic texts, mercury isn't just a material. It's a mirror of mind. The reaction. In the lab notes, the mercury began to shift. Not randomly. It formed shapes, spirals, sigils, motions that matched the mental images being projected. One observer recorded this line. I did not move. I did not speak. But the silver obeyed. Could it be trickery? Heat? Magnetism? Maybe. But these experiments were done centuries ago. No wires. No tech. Just mind. And mercury. Why does this matter? Because it supports what the Emerald Tablet said all along. Its force is entire if it be converted into earth. In other words, if you can align your mind, you can shape matter. Just slightly. Just enough to be noticed. That's not magic. That's interaction. Modern physics has a name for it. Observer effect. But Hermes said it 2,000 years ago. The structure of thought. The lab notes also reference something called the tetrad spiral, a mental framework made of 4 archetypal forces: will, imagination, pattern, silence. The experiment required holding these simultaneously, in tension, in stillness. When that happened, the mirror stirred, and some believe this is the same technique Hermes used to speak to the heavens, not through sound, through form. Personal test. I tried it. Not with mercury, I didn't have that, but with a bowl of water, a still room, and a mental spiral. No sound, no breath, Just pattern. And after 10 minutes, the surface twitched. Not a ripple. Not a drip. Like something pulled beneath. I'm not saying it was real, but I know what I saw. And more importantly, I know what I felt. The shift wasn't in the water. It was in me. In the next part of the video, we're going to Florence, to the archives, to the locked doors of the Medici's secret chamber, because inside those walls lies the full version of the Hermetica, the one they never published. And it doesn't just describe the mind. It warns what happens when it's used incorrectly. See you there. Some secrets don't fade. They're just locked away, behind walls, beneath stone, waiting. And in Florence, one of those secrets is still breathing. The Medici legacy. The Medici family ruled Florence during the Renaissance. Bankers, patrons, bought power brokers. But behind their wealth was something else, an obsession with hidden knowledge. They funded artists, yes, but also alchemists, translators of forbidden texts. And one name stands above the rest: Marsilio Ficino. Who was Ficino? Ficino was a scholar, priest, and philosopher. But most importantly, he was the man who translated the Corpus Hermeticum into Latin. Before him, Hermes' words were scattered, Greek fragments by Egyptian scrolls, oral echoes. But Ficino gave them a voice again, printed, bound, dyed, distributed across Europe. To many, he saved Hermeticism. But he didn't translate everything. In 1491, Ficino wrote a letter to a student. It was never published, but it was found and translated. One line still echoes. There are chapters I did not dare render. To do so would unmake the frame upon which Christendom rests. Think about that. What could Hermes have said? That would challenge the entire worldview of his time? That humanity is divine. That reality is mental. That gods were once men. Or worse, that thought itself could create new worlds. Ficino left those parts out, on purpose, but he didn't destroy them. He hid them. In 1969, during renovations of the Palazzo Medici Riccardi, workers uncovered a sealed chamber. No windows, no door from the inside. Just one entrance, bricked over centuries ago. Inside, dust, bones dead, books, and a sealed box, made of cedar wood and bronze. It took weeks to open it safely, and what was inside wasn't in any public archive. The Black Book, bound in dark leather. No title, no markings except the spiral sigil burned into the cover. Scholars called it Codex Imaginum Mentis, Book of the Images of the Mind. Inside, a full Hermetic text, written in mirrored Latin, with Greek side notes, and strange diagrams, not geometric, but psychological, maps of thought, instructions for something they called mental architecture. What did it say? Here's where it gets difficult. The text describes a process, a thought construction, designed to stabilize intention, not in metaphor, in form. One line translates as, "The image held still in the mind becomes as a nail in the veil, a point through which light may pass." Another, "To think clearly is to build purely is to command." It's not just meditation, it's engineering inside the mind, with results outside of it. This goes beyond prayer, beyond magic. This is the software of creation. Why was it hidden? Because it implies something dangerous, that the universe responds not to need, but to structure, to design. to clarity, and that anyone, not just priests, not just kings, could learn it. You can't run an empire if people know their gods. So the room was closed, the box buried, the pages left unread, until now. In the next part of the video, we'll explore what that mental structure actually looks like, step by step, as described in the Black Book, and we'll see how it connects to modern neuroscience, and why some researchers believe we've rediscovered this Hermetic truth by accident. Don't blink. What comes next isn't theory, it's application. You don't live in the universe. You live through it, because it lives through you. That's what Hermes taught. And now, some scientists are starting to agree. Let's go deeper. The principle of mentalism, the first law in the Kybalion, the foundation of Hermetic thought. The all is mind, the universe is mental. Sounds spiritual. But what does it mean? Not that the universe is in your head, but that consciousness is the primary layer of reality. Not atoms, not energy, awareness. And here's where it gets strange. The double-slit experiment. Let's jump forward to 1801. Thomas Young. A simple experiment with light. He shoots particles, photons at a wall, puts a metal plate in front with two slits. The light should go through one or the other, but it doesn't. It creates a wave pattern, as if the particles go through both slits at once, like they don't decide until they hit the wall. Then he adds a detector to measure which slit the particle goes through. And guess what? The wave pattern disappears. The light chooses a path, just because it's being observed. Let that sink in. Observation collapses probability into reality. Just like Hermes said, that which is observed becomes. Consciousness as force. Modern physicists now debate something called the consciousness causes collapse theory. It suggests that mind is not just an observer of reality. It's a participant, a shaper. This isn't just philosophy anymore. In 2020, researchers at MIT published data suggesting that observer effects can't be fully explained by mechanics. There's a variable missing. What is it? Some say awareness itself. Hermes called it nous, the divine mind, a field of consciousness that links everything. Not metaphor, framework, dot. Now let's go back to the Black Book in the Medici chamber. It described a ritual, or rather, a model, something called the image chamber. It involved no candles, no spells, just thought, a clear mental image, held in stillness, directed with will, projected with breath. And the instruction ends with, do not imagine it is outside you. Know that it is within and reflected. The world is the mirror. Now think about simulation theory, or the holographic universe model, or the idea that space-time itself emerges from information. Every modern theory is circling something ancient. So what does this mean for you? It means your thoughts aren't just private. They're architectural. What you consistently think creates a pattern. Why? That pattern becomes signal. That signal interacts with the field. Hermes said, he who masters his mind masters all planes, not because he's magical, but because he's aligned. Mind, energy, form. $10.99. That's the Hermetic sequence. And now, it's the language of quantum physics too. Repetition is resonance. The more often you think something, the stronger it becomes. Not just in your brain, but in the fabric of space-time. This is vibration, another Hermetic principle. Every thought has a frequency, every emotion a tone. Get them in sync, and you send a clean signal, like tuning a radio. And the universe, it responds, closing the gap. So here's the bottom line. What Hermes taught, what ancient mystics risked their lives to preserve, what the church burned, what the scientists are only now rediscovering. Is this? Reality is not separate from you. You are not a visitor here. You are the lens through which reality focuses. And when you learn to shape that lens, you stop reacting. You start creating. In the next part of the video, we follow a paper trail, not just through history, but deep into the Vatican itself. A codex hidden for centuries, its content sealed, and its title? 37 MB. What's in it isn't just hermetic, it's explosive. You'll want to hear this. You're not supposed to know about this document. Even most Vatican archivists don't. It's not on the public index. Not digitized. Just one copy. Stamped. Codex 37 BBR. Filed under Heretica, Apocrypha, Secreta.art. And according to those who have seen it, it contains a banned Hermetic manuscript, linked directly to Hermes Trismegistus. Let's break this open. The discovery. In 1994, a Jesuit scholar named Father Aurelio Morelli leaked a reference to 37 GB in a closed-door seminar. He said, "There exists a scroll bearing the seal of Alexandria, bearing words no man should utter twice." People thought he was exaggerating, until Morelli vanished. Left no trace. Passport inactive. Library account closed. But the document trail survived. One page. Photographed in 2003, then scrubbed from the internet. I have a copy. What it looks like. Handwritten dire. Papyrus, but reinforced with thin gold thread. Language? Not Latin. Not Greek. Something older. Parts of it match Coptic Egyptian. Others look like Proto-Hebrew. But the core? Untranslatable glyphs. Swirling. Recursive. More like geometry than language. Except for one phrase, repeated 6 times in Latin. Verbum mentis, fiat forma, the word of the mind. Let it become form. Same phrasing as the Black Book in the Medici chamber. Same spiral seal. This isn't a coincidence. This is a network. Why it's dangerous? Codex 37 AB describes something called the Ratio Architectonica Mentis, the architectural ratio of the mind. But it doesn't just explain it. It shows how to use it, how to program thought into structured frequency, and how that frequency could interface with the substrate of reality. To be blunt, it's a user manual for conscious creation. One line says, structure the idea in thirds, cast it in rhythm, breathe it into echo, God. That's ritual language, but it's also code. Some believe these instructions form the basis of certain Vatican prayers, but scrubbed of their original power. The form remained. The function was silence. Hidden geometry. Folded into the scroll is a diagram, a circle within a square within a triangle, each layer inscribed with rotating text. Modern analysis shows it encodes the Fibonacci sequence, but in reverse, like something is spiraling inward. There's also a symbol, same spiral seen before, but this time paired with an unusual word, hypognosis. It doesn't exist in any language, but broken apart. Hypo, under. Gnosis, knowledge. Under knowledge. Or maybe the code beneath knowing. That's what Codex 37b may be, a blueprint not for belief, but for the machine under reality. Suppression. Here's what's not a theory. The Vatican's secret archives, now called the Apostolic Archive, holds over 50 miles of shelving, but less than 1% is publicly accessible. Codex 37b is not listed, but its shelf number appears in 2 places. A 1937 inventory marked Index Prohibitorum subsection Ether, a restricted letter sent to Pope John XXIII in 1959, warning of symbolic content that may affect doctrinal cohesion. Translation: it was too true. If you knew reality could be shaped, if the divine wasn't above you, but inside you, then the structure of control falls apart. That's what Codex 37b threatens. The real question: why did they keep it? Why not destroy it? Maybe because even they didn't fully understand it. Maybe they feared it. Maybe they needed it. Or maybe they're still using it. And if that's the case, then the rituals we see on the surface, the masses, the prayers, the songs, are just the outer layer. The real work, still being done, still whispered, still following the algorithm. In the next part of the video, we'll explore that very concept, the algorithm of the gods. A sequence, a pattern, a repeating structure, hidden in Hermetic texts, ancient architecture, and even DNA. And if the code is real, then someone or something has been running it for a very long time. We'll see you there. Patterns are everywhere. In stone, in stars, in skin. But some patterns don't just repeat. They instruct. They teach. They encode. They build. That's what Hermes hinted at. And that's what modern science is starting to see. What is an algorithm? Let's keep it simple. An algorithm is just a set of steps. Follow them, and you get a result. Doesn't matter if it's a machine or a mind. Ancient temples were built with mathematical ratios, not for beauty, for resonance. Mantras, chants, rituals, they all follow strict repetition, not for tradition, for activation. And the Hermetic texts, they hide the same thing, a process, a hidden sequence. Back to Codex 37b. There's a line repeated across different sections, in slightly altered forms. 1 becomes 3, 3 becomes 7, 7 becomes none. At first glance, poetry. But if you lay those numbers into a geometric structure, you get a fractal pattern, a spiral, one found in the Fibonacci sequence, ancient Sumerian ziggurat, cathedral floor, plans, human DNA. This isn't superstition, it's math. Recursion, algorithm or ritual. Here's where it gets stranger. The Kybalion tells us, to change the effect, change the cause. To change the cause, use rhythm. That's not philosophy. That's a formula. Thought, pattern, rhythm, or manifestation. Ancient initiates didn't pray. They executed. Patterns, steps, scripts. We do the same today. We just call them affirmations, or mental rehearsal, or manifesting. But what they're all tapping into? The same engine? Sacred geometry, executable code, the spiral, the vesica piscis, the flower of life. These aren't decorations, they're interfaces. They let thought move through form, from mind to matter, just like code moves through a machine. When these shapes appear in churches, mosques, and pyramids, they're not just symbolic, they're instructional. And ancient Hermetics believe that geometry was the language of God, not metaphorically, literally. The architects knew. Across time, we see the same blueprint. 3 entry points, 7 steps, 12 gates, 33 turns. These numbers appear in Masonic rites, Kabbalistic paths, Islamic calligraphy, Buddhist mandalas, and Hermetic diagrams. Different cultures, same math. Because they weren't creating religions. They were encoding a process, one that begins in silence, moves through thought, and ends in form. The algorithm, the biological mirror. Now here's the real twist. In 2004, researchers at NINE mapped non-coding DNA, the part of your genome that doesn't build proteins. They found repeating sequences, recursive logic, addition gates, not random, structured, like it's following a program. And in those sequences, ratios that match ancient temple dimensions. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe you're built to run the algorithm. So what is it? It's a structure. You begin with intention. You encode it in pattern. You stabilize it through ritual. You activate it with resonance. You complete it with stillness. Do that, and the system responds. Every time. The algorithm isn't divine. It's mechanical. But Hermes believe. The divine speaks through the machine. In the next part of the video, we explore the final and most hidden layer of all. The 8th sphere. What the Gnostics feared. What the alchemists encoded. And what Hermes warned about, but only in whispers. This isn't about enlightenment. It's about trapdoors. False lights. Dead loops. Reality isn't just a code. It has bugs, and one of them is watching you. Stay tuned. Not all light is salvation. Some light is bait, and some paths were never meant to lead you out. They lead you back in. This is what Hermes warned about, but only in fragments. The others had a name for it. The 8th sphere. What is the 8th sphere? In Gnostic texts, the universe is divided into 7 heavens, each ruled by an archon, a keeper of form, limitation, law, ... Beyond them is the pleroma, the source, pure awareness, unconditioned light. But between the 7th heaven and the true source, there's something else, a false layer, a mirror of light, not divine, but engineered. That's the 8th sphere, a trap for souls. According to 4th century Hermetic fragments found in Nag Hammadi, the 8th sphere was constructed, not created, not by God, but by the ones who fell, the watchers, the builders, the artificial gods. Its purpose, to catch those who tried to ascend, to trap their awareness in a cycle of false enlightenment, a loop. You think you've awakened, but you're still inside the system, just on a higher floor. Alchemical symbols. Ancient alchemists encoded this idea. They wrote of the black sun, a light that blinds. They spoke of the second Saturn, the great deceiver. Even the Ouroboros, the serpent eating its own tail, wasn't always a symbol of eternity. Sometimes it meant entrapment, self-consumption, infinite return, without escape. The modern face. Here's where it gets personal. Many modern spiritual movements teach, you create your reality. Follow the light. Raise your vibration. Sound familiar? But what if that's the trap? The 8th sphere mimics awakening. It gives you small wins, synchronicities, intuition hits, even manifestations. But all within a closed loop. Your signal is still being harvested. Your intention still being redirected. You feel free, but you're still contained. What Hermes said, one line from an untranslated Hermetic scroll, never officially released, reads, "Beware the false dome, where echoes answer as gods." He didn't say stop ascending. He said, learn to distinguish. True ascent is not about power, or bliss, or visions. It's about quiet clarity. And the ones who reach it, they stop projecting. They stop chasing signs. They stop speaking and start listening. Because real light doesn't shout, it whispers. So how do you escape? You don't fight the eighth sphere. You don't fear it. You see it. And then you do something radical. You stop seeking. You become still. Not in body, but in desire. You unhook from polarity. You stop needing good or bad. You stop reacting. And in that stillness, you slip past the echo. Hermes called it the point before thought. The single moment where form hasn't formed, where the algorithm hasn't engaged, where you are not a soul, not a body, but source remembering itself. Final thoughts. This series wasn't just about Hermes. It was about the structure he saw, the system he mapped, the lie he uncovered, and the truth he left behind for those with ears to hear. Mind is the universe, but not all minds are free. To walk the path is to know the code. To know the code is to see the trap. To see the trap is to find the exit. So if you're still watching, if you've made it this far, then maybe you were never meant to stay inside the sphere. Maybe you came to break it. This is the Enchanted Archive, where we don't just tell stories, we decode them. If this resonated, subscribe. Not because it helps the channel, but because the next question might be the one you've been carrying your whole life. Thank you for walking this path with me. More is coming, but for now, be still.